and I am curious milestones or important testing NASA believes can be pushed out in the schedule to accommodate the lower request. I'm also troubled by NASA's requested reductions in the Science, Aeronautics, and Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorates, while asking for $105 million for an asteroid retrieval mission that was announced seemingly out of the blue. This request was not accompanied by a budget profile, technical plan, or long-term strategy. Yet NASA has asked Congress to commit to funding the first steps. I look forward to hearing more about this mission and how NASA intends to cover the $2.6 billion that the Keck Institute for Space Studies estimated it would cost. In the Science Mission Directorate, the administration has requested authority to transfer several climate sensors from the troubled Joint Polar Satellite System and the Deep Space Climate Observatory out of the NOAA budget and assign them to the Earth Science Program budget. The budget request also transfers Landsat data continuity mission follow-on activities from the U.S. Geological Survey to NASA, and the development infrastructure for radioisotope power systems from the Department of Energy to NASA. So I'm worried that NASA is footing the bill for other agency requirements, all while being asked to take an overall budget cut. Finally, I'm concerned by the growth of the space technology program. The request for the Space Technology Program this year is a 62% increase over the appropriation it received in fiscal year 2012. This is a significant amount of growth in only 2 years. Although NASA has announced that it will organize space technology as a mission directorate, it has not requested authority to do so in the upcoming authorization bill, and it is not entirely clear how the projects in space technology differ from those in other mission directorates. Mr. Administrator, like you, I am committed to ensuring that our nation has a robust space program that will continue to lead the world for generations. I am concerned, however, that NASA has neglected congressional funding priorities and been distracted by new and questionable missions that detract from our ultimate deep space exploration goals. These distractions also take up precious lines in the budget at a time when NASA can least afford it. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Edwards, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon and welcome to Administrator Bolden. Before I begin, I want to offer my congratulations to NASA and to Orbital on the test flight of the Antares launcher on Sunday. The successful test flight speaks well of the teamwork among Orbital, NASA, and the Wallops Flight Facility and the FAA, and including the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport and the Virginia Commercial Space Flight Authority. So congratulations. Now today we're meeting to review the $17.7 billion request for NASA's fiscal year 2014 budget. And I know, General Bolden, that it's not been easy getting to this point. With sequestration and the late resolution of the fiscal 2013 budget, we in Congress have not provided you with the optimal conditions under which to plan and implement NASA's inspiring portfolio of missions. But here we are. Now, I've said before, and I'll say it again, that our investments in research and development, including space, are investments in innovation, jobs, and future economic growth. If we skimp on the input side of the equation, we can't expect positive changes in our nation's capacity for innovation and growth. That's why we need to take a careful look at how the resources requested match the program content included in the fiscal year 2014 budget request. At the full committee hearing just last week on FY 2014 budget requests for science agencies, the President's science advisor, Dr. Holden, testified, and I quote, "NASA has long had the problem of 20 pounds of mission in a 10-pound budget, and they continue to. I share that concern. This proposal includes requests for NASA's key priorities, the James Webb Space Telescope, the International Space Station, and the Space Launch System, and Orion Crew Vehicle, along with its science and aeronautics programs and its infrastructure support. I worry that for all the work that NASA is tasked with doing to move forward towards fulfilling the 2010 NASA Reauthorization Act, that the agency is also cherry-picking aspects of that strategic plan that it finds favorable while undercutting other priorities in the law. For example, the 2014 budget request includes $105 million as a down payment to fund initial concept work on a mission that would demonstrate solar electric propulsion technology that is needed to capture a small asteroid. move it into translunar region, and then potentially use that asteroid as a target destination for the first crewed flight of the SLS and Orion system. In addition, the request includes $820 million a year over the next several years to fund the development of commercial crew capability for transporting astronauts to and from the ISS, a significant increase from the $400 and $500 million range that Congress has been willing to authorize and appropriate for those activities in the last 3 fiscal years. My fear is that I've already gotten to the 20 pounds of program content that Dr. Holdren was talking about in NASA's $17.7 billion request. And that doesn't include the unfunded new responsibilities for developing climate sensors that NASA's Earth Science program has inherited from NOAA, the $50 million increase required for full reimbursement now to the Department of Energy for resuming the domestic production of material that's needed to power deep space missions, or the 29% increase over fiscal year 2012 actual spending levels that's being sought for NASA's space technology program. To NASA's credit, the agency has been making progress in managing schedule and cost on its activities. The Government Accountability Office just recently issued a report that stated that NASA had success in the last 2 years in launching missions on cost or on schedule. I commend the agency and the contractor workforce on this progress. And yet the GAO also says that sustaining the changes that have led to these successes will be challenging within a period of flat or decreasing budgets and with the ongoing work on several large-scale and complex projects. Should any of the JWST, ISS, or SLS Orion programs experience a hiccup, the financial impact could have, and this is quoting GAO, cascading effects on the rest of the portfolio. Indeed, GAO's word of caution gives me pause since I don't see a lot of flexibility within the 2014 request for dealing with that situation. I hope today's discussion can clarify the rationale for the proposed asteroid and capture retrieval initiative proposed in the 2014 budget, and particularly how it contributes to detecting and characterizing 90% of near-Earth asteroids 140 meters in diameter or less. We've heard testimony in this committee about that, as set in policy and successive authorization acts. In these tight budgetary times, we need to be sure the proposed approach will be the most efficient means of achieving those objectives. So I look forward, Administrator Bolton, to what I hope will be a beginning of an active dialogue on both the policy and resources required to support NASA and in effectively implementing its challenging and inspiring portfolio. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yield, well, not the balance of my time, but I do yield.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee for a statement, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. America is a nation of explorers, and space is the next frontier. Just last week, NASA announced the discovery of new worlds beyond our solar system that resemble our own planet. We in Congress need to be diligent in our review of the administration's proposed budget for NASA to ensure that this agency remains focused on its primary mission, space exploration. In April 2010, almost 3 years ago, President Obama addressed the NASA workforce at the Kennedy Space Center. He stated that the next mission for American astronauts beyond the International Space Station was an asteroid and canceled NASA's many years of work to return to the surface of the moon. Last December, the National Academy of Sciences review of NASA's strategic direction made the following observation. The committee has seen little evidence that a current stated goal for NASA's human spaceflight program, namely to visit an asteroid by 2025, has been widely accepted as a compelling destination by NASA's own workforce, by the nation as a whole, or by the international community. On the international front, there appears to be continued enthusiasm for a mission to the moon, but not for an asteroid mission, end quote. Not having found a suitable asteroid for NASA astronauts, the President's budget now proposes a robotic asteroid retrieval mission to bring one closer to the moon. NASA's budget does not identify where the funding for such an asteroid retrieval mission will come from, but it is likely to detract from NASA's human spaceflight projects, the International Space Station, Orion Crew Vehicle, and Space Launch System. Further, the President's budget requests over $1.8 billion for NASA's Earth science programs. How does this high level of spending affect other NASA priorities, especially planetary exploration? Here are the priorities for NASA's exploration missions that have been consistent in congressional authorizations for the past 8 years. We need to make the International Space Station both an international and scientific success that will enable further exploration beyond Earth orbit. We need to build new systems to once again launch American astronauts on American rockets as soon as possible. Today, the U.S. pays Russia $63 million to take each of our astronauts to the station. While we support certain investments by NASA to fund private sector cargo and crew initiatives to support the station, Congress has been clear over the years that the Orion crew vehicles serve as a backup option. And finally, after receiving testimony from many engineers and astronauts, Congress has been insistent that in order to venture beyond low Earth orbit, a heavy lift launch vehicle, NASA's Space Launch System, needs to be developed. The goal of NASA's human spaceflight program is to go to Mars and beyond on a path that includes returning to the Moon or asteroids as necessary. This stepping stone approach for our exploration out of low Earth orbit is clear and unambiguous. While federal budgets will continue to be uncertain, congressional support for NASA's exploration mission is clear and unwavering. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Who wish to submit additional opening statements, your statements will be added to the record at this point. At this time, I would like to introduce today's witness, the Honorable Charles F. Bolden, Jr., the Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I now recognize Administrator Bolden to present his testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Let me thank you for the opportunity to appear today to discuss NASA's fiscal year 2013 budget request. Let me start by thanking the full committee as well as this subcommittee for your continued bipartisan support of NASA and the world's second-to-none civil space program. That support is also reflected among the American people in the White House, as evidenced by the President's $17.7 billion funding request for NASA. The budget reflects today's fiscal realities, and it aligns NASA's full spectrum of activities to meet the President's challenge to send humans to an asteroid by 2025 and to Mars in the 2030s. As part of the agency's overall asteroid strategy, NASA is planning a first-ever mission to identify, capture, and redirect an asteroid into orbit around the Moon. This mission represents an unprecedented technological challenge, raising the bar for human exploration and discovery, while helping protect our home planet and keep bringing us closer to a human mission to Mars in the 2030s. This budget also supports NASA's partnerships with American industry partners who are developing new ways to reach space. These partnerships are creating jobs and enabling NASA to focus on new technologies that benefit all of our missions. An industry partner, SpaceX, has begun resupplying the International Space Station with cargo launched from the U.S., and Sunday's successful test launch of Orbital Sciences Antares marks another significant milestone in NASA's plan to rely on American companies to launch supplies and astronauts to the International Space Station. Orbital is now poised for its first demonstration launch and mission to the ISS later this year. The administration is committed to launching American astronauts from U.S. soil within the next 4 years, and this budget provides the necessary resources to achieve this goal. This budget fully funds the International Space Station that remains the springboard to our next great leap in exploration. It also continues investments that are developing the SLS rocket and Orion crew vehicle that will take astronauts to deep space, and it supports driving the development of space technologies such as solar electric propulsion that will power tomorrow's missions and help improve life here on Earth. This budget continues to build on our nation's record of breathtaking scientific discoveries and achievements in space, with science missions that will reach farther into our solar system and provide critical knowledge about our home planet. Among other science goals, the budget will sustain NASA's vital role in helping us understand Earth's system and climate and the dynamics between our planet and our sun. These efforts will provide critical knowledge about our home planet and potential threats. We will continue our steady progress toward our next great observatory as we develop the James Webb Space Telescope, scheduled to launch in 2018. NASA's program of innovative aeronautics research is pursuing an ambitious research agenda for substantially reducing aircraft fuel consumption, emissions, and noise. With the 2014 requests, NASA begins a new $25 million a year advanced composites project